It's ahead of November's midterm elections. It is the latest survey from NPR, PBS NewsHour, and Marist. 48% of voters say if the midterms were held today, they would more likely to vote for the Democratic candidate. 41% say they would vote Republican. That's a 1-point increase for Democrats since last month, and overall a 10-point swing from April, when 47% said they would back the Republican candidate. In the same new poll, 55% of all voters say they oppose the court's decision to overturn Roe, although the majority of Republicans say they support the ruling. I want to see a poll of Republican women.
Yeah, well, it's not as wide of a gap as Democrats might believe. I think the majority of Republican women probably support the ruling. But Willie, and we can love to get everybody else's insight on this, but there's a trade-off here, and it really does depend on who is inspired to go out for turnout. But there's going to be a trade-off. Donald Trump hates this privately, and he's complaining about it privately because this will hurt him. This will hurt Republican candidates in the very areas that cost him the election in 2020 in the suburbs. We always talk about the suburbs of North Atlanta, the Philly suburbs, the I-4 corridor, which, of course, Republicans did fairly well in. But those suburban areas are areas that Republicans have been losing over the past several years, the suburbs. And this is only going to cause especially women in the suburbs to move away from them more. On the other side, you have Hispanic voters who have long been more traditionally pro-life than a lot of Democrats have given them credit for. You may have a break towards Republicans on that side of the margin. And then, of course, as always, there's a split in education. College grads, people with post-grad degrees, they're going to move toward the Democrats after this ruling, if you believe the polling. And those with high school degrees, those who really formed the backbone of a lot of Republican surge over the past 20, 30 years, they're going to most likely, if you believe the polls, move to Republicans. So I don't think it's clear-cut. I will say something's happened over the past 2-3 months. Yeah. And maybe it's the gun debate. Maybe it's the leaked memo that in several polls have shown Democrats picking up 10 points in the generic ballot test. This is a little tighter than some of the ones that I've seen, but there's some others that show Democrats surging as much as 10 points.
Yeah, if you think about what's happened in that time as we look down, and we should be clear that this does not include the last week when the Roe decision officially came down. But as you said, we heard the leaked memo. We saw the details of it. We assumed that this was going to happen. So maybe you can factor that in to Democrats' increased enthusiasm. We had the January 6th trials, of course, that come within this poll. And then, as you said, the gun debate as well. So, Gene Robinson, this Roe versus Wade, as you look at the enthusiasm among Democrats, is something immediately after it came down that Speaker Pelosi and President Biden said, our recourse here is to go vote. If you don't like what you saw at the court on Friday, you have to go vote. Do you expect this to be a galvanizing issue as Democrats go to polls in the fall?
Well, look, I think, first of all, the major impact of the decision is on humanity, is on people, right? And who making that decision. But in terms of the politics, yes, I expect it to boost Democratic candidates. And in fact, I will be very interested to see what those numbers look like when they do figure in last Friday, the day it actually came down, because it was one thing to know it was coming, even to read the draft opinion, but to have it just sort of land Friday. Just have it happen. I know that just anecdotally, people I've been talking to, it just personally hit them really harder than they would have expected, knowing it was coming. And so I wonder what impact it's going to have. I also wonder, I always look at those numbers for independents, and Democrats and Republicans are not, well, together they're the majority of the population, but the largest segment of voters consider themselves independent. And if they break substantially toward Democrats, then this could be a very different midterm election from the one that a lot of people were expecting.